Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sree's daily global COVID-19 show. This is our chance to talk about COVID-19 away from the headlines and just to pay attention to other aspects of the crisis while not forgetting the enormous global tragedy that we are seeing unfolding before our eyes. More than 90,000 Americans have died and so many others all over the world. I'm in New York City, and this is the epicenter of the epicenter now, and we're watching in horror as many parts of America are reopening way ahead of the schedule that the government said is the right way to open up in the US. On the show, we talk about a variety of topics, but we keep coming back to the medical and health aspects because that's as important or more important than almost anything else that we're talking about. And tonight you're in for a treat. We're going to talk to a doctor. We have this regular Ask a Doctor series. And today we're asking Dr. Kanika Monga, who is a doctor at UT Health Science Center in Houston. And we're just thrilled that she's here. She's at Dr. Kanika Monga. Please follow her on Twitter. And we would love to get your questions for her right now. Just tag your friends and share this with them so that you can ask Dr. Kanika Monga a few questions as we get started here. And also tell us where you're watching from. By the way, my job when I'm not doing this, I am the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook School of Journalism on Long Island. And the school's out for the summer, and we're still connecting and interacting with our students. The other thing I do is run a digital consulting company called DigiMentors. And DigiMentors does consulting and social, but in the last 2 months, we've really pivoted into virtual events. We're hosting talk shows like this for other companies, for individuals, nonprofits. If you would like your own show like this, get in touch. We also do a lot of conferences. And if you have a conference that's being canceled or postponed, don't let that happen before you talk to us. We help conferences succeed in a virtual format while making the money that they need in order to keep the nonprofit or the business alive. So please do talk to us. We are available, and you can ask us. Sree at sree.net is my email, sree@sree.net. And you can ask about how we do our work and what are the things we do. Sree at sree.net. We help with training, consulting, making your own live web show, and converting your in-person events to social media experiences and digital experiences. That's what we are really proud of the work that we do. And we also want to thank our sponsors who have made it possible for us to do this show for 69 straight days. Of 69 days of lockdown in New York, and 69 days we've been going strong here. And we want you to ask questions of our guests in just a minute. I want to tell you about something else that I've been thinking about. We've said that healthcare is the most important aspect of this, but the economic stuff matters, the job stuff matters. More than 30 million unemployed in America and hundreds of millions all over the world. And one of the things we thought that we could help people with is improving their social media skills. Everybody, I believe, needs a baseline of social media fundamentals. So we've teamed up with Muckrack to offer the Muckrack Academy Fundamentals of Social Media for journalists, PR pros, and everyone. And this is a free certification course starting June 8th. And you can save your seat right now, mrac.co/social. mrac.co/social. The hashtag is MRASocial. It's a on-demand course with quizzes and things like that. It's about 2 hours of content, but you can, of course, expand and lots of readings and all that good stuff. mrac.co/social, a free certification course. Take a screenshot of this or take a photo of this. Tell your friends that they should be signing up for this. All ages, all experiences, all professions, welcome for the Muckrack show, and I'm delighted to partner with Muckrack for this. All right, you have medical questions, I have medical questions, and so we're going to bring in Dr. Kanika Monga. We want her to help us answer as many questions and comments as we possibly can. Tell us what are the things that you've been confused about, even today after 69 days of thinking about all these issues. There are things I'm confused about, and so are you. And tell us where you're watching from as I bring on Dr. Kanika Monga. Hi, Doc.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for being here. I am so honored that you would come on to our show and talk to us. I know that you have you might be familiar to some people in our audience because you did our Sunday New York Times read along, which has a medical component. And we were so happy to talk to you there. And you answered so many questions, and we had so many more that we just brought you right back. And you said yes, and we're very grateful for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I had so much fun on Sunday that I was just waiting to come back on.
Yeah, and it's pretty soon that you did. So let's start by asking you what we ask every single visitor to our show. How are you? Where are you? How's your family? How are your friends? And you are a medical person, so your story is going to be a little different than everybody else.
Thank you for asking. I hope that you and your family are doing well. I'm currently in Houston, and family is safe. Things are going well, and just taking care of patients.
And where have you been these 69 days? What are the different, have you gotten out? Are you stuck inside? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so since I'm a rheumatology fellow, I work in the medical center in Houston. So for us, work has actually been busy. We've been going to work as usual. The only difference, really big difference that I'm seeing is now, instead of seeing our patients in person, I'm doing a lot of televisits. So I'm getting used to, seeing patients through the webcam and communicating with them, because even during a pandemic, we have to take care of other diseases and patients with other problems as well, because you don't want them rushing to the hospital, and you don't want any diseases flaring. So we have to keep doing our job. And I've also been taking call in the hospital. I'm not at the hospital every day, but some weekend calls here and there.
And tell us about the effect that this whole thing has had on your colleagues and your friends. What has this been like to be a doctor in the middle of this? And we should point out that you have a doctor close by.
Yeah, so my husband is a doctor. He works at the hospital. He's one of the frontline workers for this pandemic, at one of the major hospitals in the medical center. It's definitely been difficult. There's so much information out there, and as a doctor, a lot of our patients are coming to us with so many questions and advice. So we do feel a lot of pressure in staying up to date. Now, the nature of this kind of illness or disease is that we're developing new information by the hour. So it's almost not feasible to be up to date every second and every minute of the day. So there's definitely been a lot of reading, a lot of journal articles, a lot of news, research, evaluation on a lot of studies, and then also just trying to maintain balance and not burn out. Just talking to a lot of people, there's been a lot of stress. Given that COVID-19 for some patients can be so serious, there's a lot of stress and anxiety associated with that, and our patients and outcomes related to that. And, even in the hospital or even clinic settings, what I'm seeing is a lot of doctors are, they're basically the only people a lot of these patients have, because their families are being distanced away. There's so many strict guidelines on how many family members or friends can even visit a patient. So a lot of times the doctors, the nurses, the healthcare providers are the patient's really only support system, if I can say that. So there's a lot going on, lots of changes. But at the end of the day, I think both my husband and I agree, we're just so grateful. We go into medical school to help take care of patients and serve. And we're really, really getting to do that firsthand, given this pandemic. So we are grateful that we're able to take care of people and try to get a lot of information out there, just to help.
Well, we're very grateful to you and all your colleagues. In New York, we have this thing where we applaud and salute our heroes at 7 p.m. I don't know what it's like exactly in Houston and where you're in Houston. I'm sure you've seen this or heard about this. Tell us how that makes you feel.
Yeah, I've definitely seen it. I mean, I saw on TV they were doing it in India as well. I've seen the videos from New York City. I haven't seen any in Houston. It's really sweet. I think it's a very warm gesture. It feels nice. But at the end of the day, I think the bottom line is instead of just applauding the healthcare professionals, I think it's also important for us to just applaud everyone around us. It's very difficult to work from home for people that aren't used to that. Lots of people are trying to get childcare for their children, and there's been a lot of balancing acts in how to maintain proper protocol and safety, yet trying to continue being productive. So I think everyone is really just doing the best that they can. So I'm just appreciative of everyone. And the truth is, the people that are sitting at home and have taken on this task to socially distance themselves, be productive at home, are actually the true frontline workers, because they're the ones that are preventing the spread, and you guys are the reason that it gives kind of a buffer between the patient getting sick and coming to the hospital. So I think you guys are the true frontline heroes, and so I think it's a collaborative effort.
That's great. Well, we want to remind everyone to follow you, Dr. Kanika Monga, on Twitter. We are so grateful to have you here. So this is the part of the show, Doc, where we do our global tour and we meet people from all over the world. You've seen us do this on the read along as well.
Yes.
And this is one of the fun things. So you tell me, as I read these things, you tell us if you've been to that place, or you have a story about that place, or you'd like to go to that place. Let's have you react, okay?
Sure.
So we're going to start with just India in general. You've been?
Of course. I was actually born in New Delhi.
Oh, okay, nice. So have you been to Andhra Pradesh in southern India?
I have not. Have I? No. I'm asking my husband. I have not been to Andhra Pradesh, but I have friends from there.
Okay. Do you think, as a favor to us, he would at some point in the next hour come by and say hello?
He's sitting right next to me.
Yeah. So.
I think towards the end of the hour.
We'll let him think about it.
Okay.
Maybe he needs to get his makeup and all that stuff done. Maybe.
Well, he's working nights, so he just woke up.
Okay. All right. Totally optional, of course. Okay. And look who's here. Judge Rosemary Aquilina. Stay safe, very important, especially as we're nearing returning to work and reopening. And if that name is not familiar to you, she is the judge who put away Larry Nassar in the USA Gymnastics scandal.
Right.
And she's a hero judge who did such amazing work. And we're so grateful to you, Judge Aquilina. She was a guest on the New York Times Read Along, just as Dr. Monga has been. And she's a hero to us. So thank you, Judge, for all you did for women, for society, for all of us.
Thank
all right.
you.
So, and so she's in Michigan. Have you been?
So my husband was actually brought up in Michigan. He went to Michigan State. So I haven't been, but I know it's definitely going to come up after we're able to travel again.
Yeah. All right. Union Square in New York.
Definitely been to New York City.
Okay. Silver Spring, Maryland. Pradnya is watching.
I have been to Baltimore.
Okay, yeah. So we lump all of like suburban DC. I mean, like suburban DC. That's that Beltway, as they call it. Yeah. And Pradnya was a guest on our read along on Mother's Day, and she was great. Oh, a question from the judge. Oh my God, I better sit up straight as I read this. Should we wear gloves in addition to masks as we return to work? Watching from Michigan. And please raise your right hand when you answer that question.
Right? Nothing but yeah. So thank you so much for that question. It's actually it's an excellent question. So what a lot of experts, and even just talking to colleagues and from my experience, what we're realizing is when you have gloves on, it gives you a fake or false sense of security. So we realized that patients were actually taking less precautions to wash their hands, and they ended up touching their face even more while using gloves. I don't know if you've seen, but Dr. Ashton from ABC News actually did a video on this where she demonstrated when she was wearing her gloves, she put some flour on her gloves, and then she showed that, wearing the gloves gave a false sense of security, but she was touching her phone, she touched her face. So honestly, wearing gloves does not make that much of a difference for the general population, especially when returning to work. But of course, if you're in the medical setting or a high risk setting or around a patient or dealing with a patient that's tested positive, then yes, you should wear gloves. and take that extra precaution. But I don't think everybody else needs to really wear gloves. As long as you practice good hand hygiene. So just washing your hands before eating, no touching your face, that actually will go the longest way.
Well, I want you to, if you notice me touching my face, please scream, because I touch my face way too often. And now as I say it, it's itching right now.
Right?
I want to touch my face as I say it. So can I make you touch your face if I say it?
Maybe. So I'm actually a lot better. When I'm at work, I don't touch my face. I'm just hyper vigilant. But when I'm at home, I catch myself touching my face or messing with my hair. And that's a big no-no.
Even the hair?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Sonu Pradeshi says, good morning. Rose says, thank you for joining us, Judge Aquilina. We appreciate your work and the interest in our show. Rose Horowitz is one of our 2 awesome producers for 69 days. They've been working with us. And Rose Horowitz is Rose Horowitz 31. She's live tweeting. And Vandana Menon, Vandana_Menon. We're grateful to both of them. And look at this. The judge says, love the show. I peek in whenever I can. Oh my God, I'm so fanboy moment here. Kavita's watching from New York City. Pradnya says, is it possible that not wearing shoes during lockdown is changing the shape of my feet? No kidding. And by the way, I will, before you answer that, and we should say to everyone before we move on that you may not know the answers to everything. Nobody knows the answers to everything. Yeah. Even the sainted Dr. Fauci does not know everything, because no one knows. And so we should be clear about that. And while she's asking you that, I will also say that I have had this strange thing where I've not been wearing shoes, right? I've been like barefoot 90% of my time instead of, 40% of my time. And therefore, I feel like my skin on my feet are being affected by this. So I don't know if you've heard of any of these things, but please go ahead.
I haven't read any research on these things, but it all sounds feasible. Since our feet are so used to being cramped up in our shoes, especially when I wear stilettos, I'm sure they're happy to breathe freely. Again, I'm not sure scientifically, the difference of not wearing your shoes versus wearing your shoes and, changing the shape. But definitely the more your feet touch the floor directly, you are at higher risk for that friction and changes in skin, getting thicker, things like that, I'm sure. Right. But, I was talking to one of my friends. So one of my biggest practices, and my husband really believes in this, is we always take our shoes off before we enter the rest of our apartment. And that's something my parents do. That's something that we both grew up doing. So we have a few friends in our friend circle that find that really odd. And they're always the ones that forget to take their shoes off. So they're the ones that always walk in with their shoes, and we have to remind them that they have to go back, take their shoes off. So now I'm actually seeing a lot of those friends have now been converted, and everyone's taking their shoes off, and they're too scared to walk into their houses and into their rooms, which I think is good practice regardless of this pandemic.
I've said that this pandemic has sort of reinforced everything my mother ever said. Wash your hands. Don't put your hands on your face. Take your shoes off. Like, right. Those are all things that Indian moms have been saying for a long time.
Yeah, and my husband actually, it's so funny. He has taken it to a different level. So like I mentioned, he's a frontline worker at the hospital. He actually has 2 different pairs of shoes. He switches shoes in his car and then brings in the safe shoes and doesn't even bring his hospital shoes anywhere close to our apartment.
Yeah, there was some work around that. Somebody said that the virus can be, in the ER and places like that.
Right.
And so we should look out for it. Carla says, hello from Cape Coral, Florida. Tell me your Florida memories.
So we spent many actually Christmas breaks going to, what is that place called? Destin, the white beaches. So we used to get a home there and spend Christmas break there because the weather was warmer, nice shopping at the outlets. So I've spent time in Florida, definitely.
Nice. And Sonu says, tell me about what the strategy after the lockdown in the US. What do you think about the strategy of everything that's happening right now? Folks, you're watching a conversation with Dr. Kanika Monga, who's a doctor in Houston, and she's a rheumatologist. She'll tell us what that is in just a minute, but first she'll answer this question.
Yes, so that's actually a tough question. I'm happy that I'm not in charge of coming up with the strategy. Personally speaking, I think what Houston, I can only talk about Houston right now since that's the place that I've experience with. What we've done is they've decided to open up restaurants to 25% capacity as of last week. And then just as of this week, bars and salons and bowling alleys are opened up to 25% capacities. And now restaurants can actually extend to 50% capacity. But the good thing about Houston is our mayor has said that there will be 11 to 12 different testing sites all over the city where patients or people, whether symptomatic or not, can go and get free COVID-19 testing. So I'm not sure if I'm in agreement of opening things up so quickly. I'm more apprehensive. I would have ideally wanted to open up and go back a little slower. Maybe would have first done the testing and then based on those results decided to open things up. But again, I'm not in charge of the strategy, but I am grateful that free tests are going to be available to people regardless of symptoms. So that's going to help us really identify the people out there that are asymptomatically spreading secondary secondary COVID-19. So I at least agree with more testing. I think that is going to be the key to open up and loosen this lockdown, not only in the United States, but I think all over the world.
We have a comment on Twitter, by the way, that says post-COVID, micromobility and AV will pick up to reinforce the social distancing quotient. And he's talking about, I thought he was talking about something medical, but he's actually talking about things like micromobility means like scooters and things like that, not long distance travel, and AVs, right. Autonomous vehicles is what he's talking about. I learned about that from my wife, Rupa, who works at a company that does a lot of work in autonomous vehicles. So you learn from just your spouse talking on those conference calls, right? How are you and your spouse managing in your work? I guess you're on different shifts, so it's not as much, and you don't have as many conference calls, but you have the telemedicine calls.
Yeah, so actually work has been really busy, and my husband works a night shift in the medical ward, so he's a hospitalist and a nocturnist. So he sees, once patients are admitted from the ER and they're identified as having a medical problem, he is actually the supervising attending on the medical service for those patients. So as you can imagine, they've been quite busy. So a lot of times when he finishes his shift, which he does 7 in a row, when he comes in the morning, I'm usually heading out to clinic, because even though we're doing virtual visits, we are physically going to our clinics to, complete those. So my schedule has been, I've been still seeing the same amount of patients as I did pre-pandemic, and sometimes even more phone calls because patients are anxious about their medications and they want to discuss, any new updates with the disease and whether they should be taking medications, shouldn't be. So definitely been very busy. But luckily what he does is he does 7 night shifts and then he gets 7 days off. So during his off, some of those off days overlap with my weekend. And if I'm not on hospital call, I am home, and we just try to bake banana bread and learning cooking from my mom, watching movies, watching Netflix, tuning into your show. And I'm excited about that Escapist Cinema movie festival, which is online now as well. So that's what our schedule's been looking at.
Oh, well, that's awesome that you're watching. And we want to tell everybody that we did a terrific show around that topic of Escapist Cinema. It's a film festival that everybody can watch. And we did a great show around it last week. Not great because of me, but because of the topic. And you just go to onlinefest.us and you'll be able to watch every Saturday night. They have another film from South Asia that you can watch. And that's put on by our friend Jitin Hingorani. And our other guests were a rock star in the film publicity world, Lucius Barr, and the actress Pia Shah was with us. And her little son showed up as a surprise guest. If you remember, there was a time when the BBC kid came in. You remember that interview and everybody laughed? Now people love that, right? And I'm like, that's now a sign that you're like human show. And by the way, everyone watching, please tell us where you're watching from. Please tag your friends. Please hit share. And one of the specific reasons we wanted this particular doctor is because she's a rheumatologist. And a rheumatologist is a doctor that does a very specific kind of work. And what is its connection to the news? That her patients are in need of a particular drug that's been in the news for all the wrong reasons. So Doc, over to you first. what is a rheumatologist, and then tie it all together to what's happening in the news.
Yeah, so rheumatology is a study of autoimmune disease and inflammatory processes. We treat a wide range of patients with connective tissue diseases, patients with arthritis. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about lupus, Sjogren's syndrome, rheumatoid arthritis, and then even osteoarthritis. And unfortunately, our patients have, we've definitely been in the news because of the medication hydroxychloroquine.
And so when the president first was pushing this, not just him, it came from Rudy Giuliani and the cast of characters that are surround the president who are pushing this drug and have been for weeks and months. And to the point where the president was talking about it from the podium in the White House multiple times. And there was a run on the drug, and that was affecting patients of doctors like Dr. Monga because they prescribe this and they need it. And then random people were just taking it as a prophylactic. And then it died down because people were dying in the trials, that there is no proof that that helps in any way. In Brazil, dozens of people died. And in America, they just stopped the trials early. Normally, they try to keep the trials going, right? And then what happened is that when just suddenly this week, President Trump again said that now he said he's taking it. By the way, that doesn't mean he's taking it. Just because he says he's taking it. And in a way, he could say, look, I didn't get sick because I took it. And look, I'm not sick. We don't know if he took it. And you saw the back and forth with Nancy Pelosi. And I know you don't want to get involved in any of the politics. I don't like talking about politics when we're talking about healthcare. But he called him morbidly obese, which he is. It's just a fact if you look at the BMI numbers. And we also, he called her a mental patient, or that he has mental problems. Like, this is the level of rhetoric that we are in this country. And I know you don't want to get into the politics, but your message about hydroxychloroquine is what?
Okay, yeah. So I thank you so much for this platform for me to be able to share this this message. This is something that is extremely important, and as a doctor, it's definitely been frustrating. At a time like this, you need accurate and useful information. A lot of times, things that make headlines, unfortunately, people don't go back and check whether those are really backed by research and science. So too much data is not necessarily good data. So unfortunately, that definitely happened in the case of hydroxychloroquine. A lot of people might be wondering, what is hydroxychloroquine? So it's a medication. It's used to prevent and even treat malaria. But more importantly, in more recent years, its use has really been widespread because it really helps our patients. It's a cornerstone treatment for patients with rheumatoid arthritis and systemic lupus. With these patients, what we're seeing, especially in patients with lupus, when they stop taking the medication, they actually tend to have more flares. And what do those flares mean? So those flares can be life-threatening. A lot of our patients can have lupus nephritis, which is, having a lupus or lupus impacting their kidneys. And when they flare and they have that kind of when they have a flare of their kidney disease, that can be life-threatening if it's not under control. I personally had patients calling me and saying that the pharmacy is now out of hydroxychloroquine and they're having a very, very hard time refilling their medications. I've been looking desperately for different pharmacies that are putting guidelines on who to say yes to and who not to say, who not to give it to, because they're running out. And so the most important thing out of all of this, again, not being political at all, is when you're in a place of leadership and you have a platform, you have to do justice to the information and the people that are listening. So the least you can do is make sure that all of that information that you're relaying has been verified and is backed by science. So it really saddens me that I've actually firsthand seen patients, experience a shortage. And again, like I said, those flares can be life-threatening. And so this is not something to be taken lightly. And even if not for those patients, for patients like Sree, you just mentioned, lots of studies have been done at the VA. You said in Brazil, a lot of the studies are even showing that patients that are taking the medication are not realizing that it comes with side effects. So this is not a benign medication. For patients that need it, it works really well, and I've seldom seen side effects. So I would put out that disclaimer. But you always have a risk of cardiac toxicity, QT prolongation, and that can even result in cardiac arrest. So these are medications to pop like vitamins. This is not something you should be taking just because you heard it on the news or one headlines. You have to make sure that it's safe for you. And there's so many factors, that go into play for these sorts of things. Your comorbidities, your age group. And so it's not something to be taken lightly. And I'm really sad that this medication has become so famous and notorious at the same time, because it is something that we've been so thankful for in our rheumatology community, because it's really helped our patients.
And just to point out that historically, some medicines that are prescribed or researched for one thing become suddenly useful in another thing, right? There are any number of stories about things that we use every day today that were meant for something else. So that is not unusual. And so it wasn't wrong to investigate this.
Right.
I think that was wrong was to get ahead of the science, get ahead of the medical evidence and say this will work when there was no proof of that. Can I ask? Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, I was going to say one important message that I have as a doctor to everyone listening is the reason this medication made headlines is because it was preclinical data, which means the original study that was done or that was cited, and the reason that it became such a big headline, Elon Musk tweeted about this in March, then President Trump tweeted about this medication. The reason all of this was actually all based off of preclinical data. So what that means was this medication was evaluated in a lab. It was in vitro, not on humans. And it did show a little bit of promising data. And so that's where all this widespread information from that. And, I think that was valid after finding that in preclinical data, it was successful. I think it's valid to, want to evaluate it to see whether it even does the same in humans.
Can I ask you, why did is it normal for preclinical data to be public?
So yes, so that's basic sciences data. It was a simian model, and it was done in a lab. And usually a lot of our clinical data is backed up by basic sciences. First, you want to confirm it in a lab, and then only do you want it to go to humans, generally speaking. So it is normal for that to be public, and it is normal for that to be available. So there's, I don't have anything against that. But I do want to add and say, there was actually a really nice paper done. How often, and this is, I'm talking about the best preclinical data, highly promising preclinical data. How often does it actually translate into treatments, successful treatments? So how often, right? And there's this nice paper done. So out of 101, let's say these were the best studies in the best journals, so done really well, really good methodology. How many of those studies really translated into good treatments, clinical treatments, right? That was only 5 out of 101. And this probably overestimates, because these were the best studies to begin with. So only 5 out of 101 actually yielded into promising treatment options. So you should always take that, take that into consideration, especially when making statements about preclinical data applying in the clinical world.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And Elon Musk, I admire him as an entrepreneur, but he has shown terrible judgment in so many things, so many ways, including taking on the SEC, calling someone a pedophile publicly with no evidence for no reason. He also has, smoked narcotics on podcasts. I mean, he's just all of that stuff. And then he has said that he should be arrested if he opens the plant, and he should be arrested if the plant is opened against the state distancing laws or guidelines. So he's not a man to be trusted on this kind of science. Yes, he knows, autonomous vehicle science, and he knows car science and battery science. Absolutely, you can admire him for that. But he is turning into one of those people who become, untrustworthy on so many things because their expertise in one subject makes them feel invincible to comment on other things. And that is a flaw that human beings have. And we all have to be careful about doing that. So let's keep going to the comments. Scott is joining us, and Scott says, hello, Sree from Spokane, Washington State, the real Washington. Have you been?
No, I really, really want to go, though.
You know Seattle? No?
Never been to Seattle.
Okay, so we're making, I hope your husband's still listening, we're making like a tour of the United States for him to take you on. And Sonu says, good morning, Kanika G, that's sweet. And G, the J-I that you might see, you might have heard Gandhi G. Folks who are watching, that means just like an honorific that means ma'am or sir. Yeah. It's a way of saying that.
It's Paula like is watching. Usted in Spanish.
Yo, you're nice. Paula is watching from Tallahassee, Florida. And this weekend on the New York Times Read Along, we had too many people from Tallahassee, Florida, because Paula was there. Paula's our fabulous producer, and she was there, and so was Rick Wilson and Steve Shale, a Republican and a Democrat. Right. And Kanika, you can see, is there as well. She was there as our medical guest in the last half hour. And those three people are all from Tallahassee, Florida, the capital of Florida. And Rick Wilson, we experienced something, as did Kanika, called the Rick Wilson effect, which I'll talk about in just a second. So every Sunday morning, folks, 8:30 to 10:30 a.m. Eastern, I read aloud the Sunday New York Times like a crazy person, been doing it for 5 years. And we now bring in guests. And so we had Rick Wilson, who has written 2 books that have been New York Times bestsellers. And you tell us about the Rick Wilson effect, Doc.
Oh, it was actually, I was so excited to be on that episode. It was really interesting. Of course, I enjoyed being on the show, but I loved being backstage and hearing the conversation. I know my dad was tuning in. He was extremely thrilled about it. So the Rick Wilson effect, whenever Rick Wilson retweets your tweet, it goes viral, from a good type of viral, and also there's a bad type of viral. So it's all mixed together. So you have to take the good with the bad. There's lots of trolling, but there's also, it provided a really good platform. Lots of people tuned in, watched the show, and I was just grateful and really enjoyed that conversation.
Yeah, no, that's great. By the way, have you told all your folks that you're here? Have you shared this on your Facebook and Twitter?
I have. I've shared it on my Facebook. I'm trying to stay away from my phone right now, but I use notifications. So hi, everyone tuning in.
All right. And Rahat Monga, who's that?
That's my brother.
Okay, very good. Do you want to give him a shout out? What is he doing? How is he?
Rahat, how are you doing? What's going on? He's in Beaumont right now.
Beaumont, Texas.
Beaumont, Texas. That's actually... I moved there in the year, so I was born in India, in New Delhi. I grew up in Saudi Arabia. And then I actually moved to Beaumont, Texas in 2000, and I've lived in Texas ever since.
Was there any change in the circumstances? Tell us about Texas, life in Texas and life in Saudi Arabia. It's hot in both places. Oil is really important.
Right. So that
some extreme views on certain things.
Exactly. Some things really hadn't changed, but the biggest thing, I think, like you already mentioned, oil was a common factor. My dad works for ExxonMobil. He's in, so that's what the connection between Saudi to Texas was. Beaumont's a, smaller place in Houston, but has a very loving community. I feel like when you go to the grocery store, you run into people that you know all the time. So I love that feel. I'm grateful for it. It is my hometown now. Really proud to be from there. When I had first moved from Saudi to Beaumont, my mom actually she didn't know how to drive. So I just remember random, anecdotes from her moving to the US, learning how to drive for the first time. And then us adjusting to school. I had grown up going to the American school in Saudi Arabia. So the curriculum was not necessarily different, but I was a 5th grader, and it was an interesting transition.
I also came to this country when I was very young. I first landed here when I was 9. There was a lot of adjustment. So we're looking at your Twitter account. I don't know if you have had it examined publicly like this. This is the equivalent of a medical exam of your Twitter account. So we're going to do that right now. We didn't prep you for this, and we should say that everyone should follow her. She's Dr. Dr. Kanika Monga on Twitter, so you should follow her. And she doesn't know this, but I'm a huge fan of Calvin and Hobbes. It's even on my resume as one of my interests.
Oh, really?
Let's see what she had to say, or what was the comic she picked. Of all the things she could pick in the entire planet, this is the cartoon she chose to be her brand. So let's see what it says. If you could wish for anything, what could it be? A sunny field to be in? A stupid field? You got that? You go, wait, you've got that now. Think big, riches, power, pretend you could have anything. Actually, it's hard to argue with someone who looks so happy, she says, and that's a beautiful cartoon. And I love Calvin and Hobbes. And if people haven't seen it, they have to see Dear Mr. Watterson, which is a movie documentary made with great love about the creator of Calvin and Hobbes. And that's what she chose to put on there. Anything you want to say about Calvin and Hobbes?
So my husband and I actually we both met in medical school. We actually really bonded over Calvin and Hobbes, and one of the first presents he ever bought me, and that's when I knew he was the one, was a complete Calvin and Hobbes set. So I have it. Actually, I'm staring at it on my bookshelf right now. If I try to pull it down, I think a lot of other books would probably fall off, but I'm actually staring at the complete Calvin and Hobbes book 1 through 4.
I love that. I love that you folks bonded over that. We have the same book, the entire collection, and we know all the cartoons. So that's awesome. Let's see what else you have on your Twitter feed. So you're a rheumatology doctor. It says it's UTELF. No, it's not UTELF. It's UT Health.
Yes, UT.
What is that? What is that?
UT Health? That's UT Health is one of the, it's one of Houston's, like it says, Houston's health universities. It's actually joined with Memorial Hermann Hospital. It's also, we have a medical school, which is McGovern Medical School. And that's where I did residency and now fellowship. So that's my home, my work home.
Great. And what is AC Rheumatology?
So the American College of Rheumatology is our national society where all of us rheumatologists get together and advocate. We do a lot of education and we do a lot of research and a lot of networking. Actually, it unites not only the country. When during our annual conferences, we have attendees and members from all over the world, actually. And it's like pretty much, I call it the Disney World for rheumatologists, the annual meeting event.
Is it a wild and crazy time?
It's just lots of rheumatology, lots of rheumatologists, lots of new data, research, and socializing and meeting a lot of people that we mingle with. I'm so grateful for the med Twitter and social media doctors that I connect with on Twitter. So I'm so grateful for that. And then during that once a year event, I get to meet some of them in real life, and it's one of the best things ever.
That's pretty cool. So we're just, we're doing a CAT scan of your Twitter, basically.
I was not prepared for this.
Yeah, well, I'm getting revenge for all the times the doctors have prodded and examined us without warning us in advance. They're all the shots we've ever gotten. So everybody ask lots of questions, tear apart the Twitter handle here. Follow her, please, at Kanika Monga, Dr. Kanika Monga. You are an alum of the medical unit, and that's the other reason we connected, was that you are interested in medical journalism. So talk about that.
Right. So when I was in medical school, I went to medical school in El Paso, Texas, and I had done undergrad at UT Austin. So moving from Austin to El Paso was definitely unique. The backdrop of El Paso was completely different. I moved to a place where I hardly knew anybody there. So I thought it'd be a huge change. And then to that, add medical school, right? Grueling medical school. So during that time period, I really discovered my love for media. So I started writing initially just lifestyle posts, about juicing and yoga, healthy diet, exercise, even lots of Hindi cinema posts. And I did a few interviews at that time. And when I moved to Houston, there's a lot more opportunity for media. And what I realized was medical journalism was picking up. And it was this new thing. People finally were interested to hear about health. They wanted to learn more about health. It wasn't just about entertainment or food or, sporting events. There was a huge interest developing in wanting to know about your health, learning about your health, and actually wanting to hear from doctors directly. So that gave me such an incredible outlet. I had met a doctor, Dr. Higgins, he's a cardiologist at UT, with UT Health and at Memorial Hermann, who did a lot of these interviews on the news. And I just thought he was doing this wonderful thing of taking scientific data, translating it in a way that more and more people could understand it, and putting it on platforms, whether it was news, newspapers, blogs, in a way that could disseminate faster. Because what I realized was, in my clinic setting, I could educate my patient and their family and perhaps friends, but that's limited to how many patients I see in a day. But if I became best friends with media, I would be able to disseminate information that I thought was important to such a big platform, and there would be no boundaries out. I mean, it wouldn't just be limited to people that were able to come to our clinic. So I decided to do a rotation in New York City. I stayed there for a month, and I worked at ABC News headquarters, and had the best time of my life. I acquired skills from the producers there. I got to do so many segments on Good Morning America. I got to do segments with David Muir. I mean, it was really, really incredible. We did the Medical Minute daily, and then we also did just lots of things. I did a lot of pieces for ABC Digital at that time, and I even did an episode for a TV show with ABC. So after that experience in residency, I realized that I really wanted to hone my skills. I wanted to be a better advocate for my patients, for the healthcare community, and really, really wanted to learn more about media and the amazing, and really, really try to maximize that dispersion of information for everybody out there.
So our time has been flying by. I can't believe it's already been 45 minutes and we haven't even got through all the comments, let alone all the questions. So we're going to do a quick set of look at some of the comments. Jeffrey says hi. Kavita says another wonderful topic with Sree and Kanika.
Thank you.
Pradnya has tagged all these folks. Everybody, please do this. Tag people who would benefit from seeing this conversation. Very important. And the judge is back, and she says, thank you and your husband for working and risking your health to help others and make the world safer. What a great comment. Thank you, Judge Aquilina. So grateful. And Tala says, good morning. And by the way, anyone who wants to see that video of Rick Wilson, or to see the show with Judge Aquilina, or any of the shows we've done, more than 5 years worth of videos, you just go to my YouTube page. Sreenet is my YouTube page, SREENET, and you can find that video. Just email me if you have a question, Sree@Sree.net, SREENET, Sree@Sree.net, or YouTube Sreenet. Pradnya's tagging people, and Asif says, hello, great effort, Scroll. And Scroll is our partner. Scroll.in is one of India's best news, culture, and analysis websites, and we're so glad that we're able to do this with them. And Pradnya is still tagging people, and Asif says, well, Doc, you're being modest, and gives you a namaste, so that's very nice.
Thank you.
And the judge says thank you, and Rahat says, is reminding you that Falaknuma is in Andhra. That is some sibling code. Tell us what that is.
Oh, no. So my husband and I got married in Falaknuma Palace. And so I think
in Hyderabad. Is it in Hyderabad?
Yes, it's in Hyderabad. And so I want to say he's incorrect, because that's
so it's in Telangana. So what happened is it's like you were married in like New York State, but as if New York City had then suddenly joined New Jersey. So he was right, like it's in Andhra Pradesh was the state till just a few years ago, a handful of years ago. It then hived off and joined and created not New Jersey, like a third state called Newfoundland or whatever. There was a new state. So it took the capital city of Hyderabad with it, and that's what happened. So you have been
right.
So you're both right. Okay. But he was just having fun, I'm sure, as you were thinking about this. Vandana says, here's the video on gloves Dr. Monga is talking about right there. So that's terrific to see that on there. And Rose is joining from Connecticut, she says. And Kavita is giving props to producers. Like, one of the things you learned is that there is, everybody pays attention to the people on front of the camera, but it's the producers who do all the work, right?
Yes, and they're so hardworking, and that's what helps everything like this run so seamlessly. And I'm so appreciative.
Pratnya is just excited that you said the skin on her feet is being very weird. And Rose says, odd, this question about feet. My two sons have had some redness and itching with their feet. They both have had teleconferences with a podiatrist this week. And G-Day says, you're doing an excellent job with the daily. I love what you are doing and look forward to it often, but can't keep up because of the difference in time zones. G-Day, I'm so sorry about the time zone difference. We try to do it at the end of the day because I'm busy with my work during the day. And we also, I think it's a little easier for some of our guests to come on at night. But I'll tell you, tomorrow morning, actually, we're going to be on 12 hours from now because our guest is joining us from Israel. And he's an expert on privacy and COVID-19. So 9 a.m. Eastern means we'll lose the entire West Coast because they'll still be sleeping, but others can join. And by the way, this is brand new. Just today, we're able to bring in LinkedIn comments right onto the screen here. So for 68 days, I've been ignoring a lot of the good comments that came in from LinkedIn, and now I'm able to bring them in. So Jide, you are our first LinkedIn comment. Thank you very much that we were able to bring in. And Kavita says, wearing socks is good. And Jide says that we met at the Tri-State NYU conference. We did. That's awesome. Kavita is asking if it's raining in Kerala. This is all very detailed. Everybody's forming a little community here. I look forward to being there again this year, hoping the pandemic won't stop the events. What is your sense of pandemic and gatherings? What is your plan? Do you see you going to a medical conference with more than 50 people in the next 6 months?
Personally, no, I don't think so. What I'd like to add is the American College of Rheumatology just held a very successful conference, which was going to be in person, but given the situation was actually transitioned very seamlessly. I'm sure that took a lot of hard work and dedication to a virtual conference. And honestly, I really enjoyed being a part of the virtual conference. And I assume that, of course, I can't predict what will happen in the next 6 months, but I would say that if there were any other conferences happening in the near future, they would most likely be transitioned, especially big conferences would be transitioned to being virtually just so more people can attend. And I would also think that maybe they give both options, especially the ones towards the end of the year, maybe not being canceled altogether, but having that option of being able to, if you didn't feel comfortable enough to join in person, you still wouldn't miss out on the opportunity to join the conversation virtually.
And we're working on multiple conferences, including, by the way, a conference for 50,000 teachers that I'm helping put together. Our team is doing all the production work for it, and we're very excited to tell people about it. So if anybody has an interest, if you have any teachers in your life, T4.education, the letter T, the number 4 education, a free online global conference, May 30th, Saturday, May 30th, all day. And these are the T4 stands for teacher well-being, teacher leadership, teacher technology, and teacher collaboration. I think the two of the professions that have had great kind of appreciation this time are teachers and doctors. And in fact, look at this note from Sonu. Frontline workers are doing the best around the world. And we're so grateful, Sonu, to you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
And Kavita says, Kanika, your voice is very clear. Thanks, and very interesting. So there you go. High praise. The South Asians are giving you clear but high praise. This counts as a rave review in the South Asian community. I presume this is not someone you know.
No, but thank you so much.
And Sonu says, according to you, this is a very long journey of this pandemic, isn't it?
Definitely. I think the world is definitely going to change after what we experienced. So I hope it's shorter than what we hoped for, but we have to be prepared for the worst.
So Nali is watching from LA and she says hi. Hussein is watching and says hello. So Nali says this COVID vaccine stuff is so confusing. And she's right, it is confusing because we don't know when it's coming, who's going to make it, because it could just happen like that, or it could take months. And anyway, just because somebody has a vaccine doesn't mean it's eliminated. Getting through the system, the approval processes, even if it's approved, in one country, there's going to be a massive crisis. And you know what that country is, the United States, because starting with the president and including people like Jenny McCarthy and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., they have planted the seeds of doubt about all vaccines by raising comments about specific vaccines. And that means there will be tens of millions of Americans who will not take it, who will not sign up for it. Religious exemptions. They'll want this, that, and the other thing. And the problem, Doc, with all of that is?
Yeah, so first of all, getting, to make a vaccine, there's so many things that go into play. You have to see, is it an inactivated virus? Is it activated? Is it going to be using protein? And there's so many different complicated factors that go into making a vaccination. And now let's say a vaccination was made and it was approved. The second step is, how effective is it? As we know with the influenza vaccination, it's been wonderful, but at the same time, it changes from year to year. So we really don't know all of that information as of now. Of course, if there's a vaccination that works and it's safe, I would request people to take it because that's, that is the one preventative measure we can take that could really help. And again, a vaccination is not a cure, but as we've seen with measles, when patients or people don't take vaccinations, we'll see a resurfacing of those diseases that are preventable, and that can cause a lot of deaths. It can cause a lot of health issues in patients that could otherwise be safe. And I would say, with vaccinations, and this is, just in general, a general statement from a doctor is, it is our duty to take and safeguard ourselves by using vaccinations, and also to safeguard other people that could be vulnerable, like neonates and older patients that perhaps couldn't take the vaccination for themselves. So it is something that I urge everyone to do their own research on and not listen to fake news.
Fake news. Hussein says, good morning. Sonali says, talk is cheap. And Sujana Chandrasekhar, another doctor friend, says, very nice explanation of chloroquine. Thank you. She's one of our physician friends. She's been on multiple shows of mine, and she's terrific. And she's an ENT surgeon and president of the organization, past president of their national organization. So great to see you.
I've tuned into one of the episodes that she was on.
Yeah, she's great. We did one, by the way. Do you remember? Of course, you remember the incident where the president talked about drinking bleach and disinfectant, and we said I wanted to do a show that directly would make him as mad as possible. We had 3 women, 3 immigrants or of immigrant background, 3 women of color, 3 better educated women than him, all on the show, all doctors, and telling him he's wrong. That is his worst nightmare. And that's what it kind of took for people to understand how terrible this idea that you can drink disinfectant. And then later he said he was joking and all of that. There's no way you can be joking about things from that podium without setting off people. And as you know, there were calls into the poison centers and things like that.
Right.
Ruth Bertello says, I've read that there is no evidence about the risks about touching the face. It is expert opinion. But the absence of evidence does not mean that it is not a good idea. Washing hands is a no-brainer about 5 to 10 times a day. What do you say?
So regardless of this situation, we should always wash our hands. Like you said, our mothers have always told us and advised us to do so. And especially if you're a healthcare worker, we are just prone to it. It's become second nature to wash our hands. But in this situation, realizing that the way it spreads, your hands can be a vehicle of taking it from a surface or getting it from a patient that may have had it and putting it into your mouth or putting it through your nasal cavity and then being exposed to it. So it's definitely a vehicle. And I agree with him. It's common sense.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Here's a comment from Sirsha, who says, my father is 64 and suffering from high thyroid. Please help him. And now we should make it clear, you're not going to turn this into telemedicine at the moment, but just anybody watching who has medical issues and is worried about going to the doctor or can't leave their home because of social distancing, what do you say to them, keeping in mind we're talking globally at the moment?
I would say that trying to get a hold of your primary care doctor, if you can't go there personally, seeing if they're available virtually or through email, and maybe if your primary doctor is not available, maybe just substituting with another doctor that is available. Again, it is a lot safer for patients or people, if they are suffering from any problems, to get that medical care and not wait until the pandemic is over. Because as we know, having comorbid conditions can actually predispose you to getting the disease. So I know a lot of my patients were apprehensive of coming into our clinic and seeing us in person. But the truth is that a lot of these other diseases like hypertension, diabetes, coronary artery disease, heart disease, they still need their medications. They still need medical care. Yes, we have this one thing that we're battling, but again, we can't forget about all the other illnesses and diseases out there.
You're absolutely right. Matt says Trump never said to drink bleach. That's fake news. He was talking about a UV disinfectant light. And again, I don't want to put the doctor on the spot and have her get into this. Go back and watch the video. He talked about two things. He talked about the light. He talked about a disinfectant. Matt, I'm sorry. I know you.
Yeah, I think he had said, if I remember that correctly, was injecting injecting a disinfectant, which absolutely should not be done, no matter who says to do it.
Yep. Even if your doctor says to do it, ask questions. I think that's really important. Mark Lee says, great conversation. Mark is a regular follower of our show, and he has a great podcast himself. Pradnya says, preach, Dr. Monga. And Shantanu Lal, Dr. Shantanu Lal, our favorite pediatric dentist in the world. Hi, Doc. We love being in touch with you, but we miss seeing you. We're getting the kids to brush extra hard. I don't know if that's good or not, but we're getting them to do it. Ashok is watching from Kerala in India. Pradnya said, who are these doctors prescribing the medication to those who don't really need it, right? That did happen. What is that? So in all industries, there are people who, for any number of reasons, might do things that are not exactly kosher. Talk about that for a moment.
Right. So what I would take this conversation back to would be intention. So I'll talk on behalf of, in regards to hydroxychloroquine. So if you look at the mechanism, hydroxychloroquine, by increasing pH and making the environment, or when the virus enters, right, it increases pH. So that could, in theory, inhibit the virus from entering the cell. So in theory, that mechanism did seem to apply. And then with this preclinical data that I talked about earlier, it seemed to have met two check marks. So mechanism, okay, there could be a mechanism of action that works. Two, we tested it out in a lab. Again, not human. In a lab, it showed some benefit. But so from that data, when it gets synthesized and someone that is in a leadership position, or people with platforms with a large following, tweet about it or vocalize that this is a game changer and it's worth considering, sometimes doctors that maybe perhaps aren't specializing in rheumatology or aren't as familiar with the medication perhaps would have prescribed it, because generally speaking, hydroxychloroquine is usually quite safe. In our patients with rheumatology, we do prescribe it a lot. So if there was a doctor that thought it was safe, there's some data that shows that it worked, maybe they had prescribed it on those means. I'm not advocating for them. I still think we should always read the articles, research, and data ourselves, especially when we're taking responsibility and prescribing it, because prescribing a medication comes with a lot of responsibility. So I can't advocate, and really, I really don't know what a lot of those providers were thinking when they did that. But you may have mentioned earlier today, the FDA did approve it. Given the pandemic, we all have our fingers crossed. We want something to work. Doctors, even rheumatologists, even if it's a medication that we use on our patients, we want it to work for the situation. The reason why, I'm speaking about it not being effective, or proceeding with caution, is because I'm worried that the headlines are not doing justice to what the science truly shows. So like I mentioned earlier, not all good information, not all information is good information. And just because you have data does not mean that it's good data. So it's important to see how these studies were conducted. What were the methods used? What patients was the medication tried on? What side effects yielded from it? So there's a lot of things that go into play when deciding whether medication is effective or not. So I hope that making statements about effectiveness comes with responsibility. You have to consider whether the patients that were treated or given, hydroxychloroquine, whether that study was even randomized. Because if you're not randomizing a study, that can introduce a lot of bias, and that makes a study not as, I would say, not as powerful, in my opinion. You would have to still conduct a randomized controlled study to have clear causation and association, especially when treating people during such a sensitive time.
I
And
totally
a lot of the means used to measure whether hydroxychloroquine was effective was actually just checking whether it was virological clearance. So virological clearance, we don't know if that translates into clinical efficacy and if it really translates into patients having better outcomes. So yes, you could see that maybe the virus cleared, but what does that even mean? So I don't want to get too scientific when I talk about it, but one of the biggest takeaways from medications, and not only for this pandemic, but in general, is a lot of our studies whenever they're published on big and reputable journals, they go through something called a peer review process. And that's a very stringent process where you have, let's say, experts and scientists submitting their study and a manuscript. And then you have other experts that aren't associated with the study reading over it and checking the methodology. And only when that manuscript has gone through that kind of filter is it available to the public. But what's happening in a time like right now is everyone is very, very hungry for more information and more data. So a lot of these studies that we're talking about have not been peer reviewed. So a lot of these studies haven't been stringently examined by other experts. So what I urge is when you hear about these studies, you should be that expert. If you have that background and being able to analyze this information, go back and read them. Could this apply to ask the question, could this apply to my patient group? And if not, then don't advocate for this kind of treatment, because it can pose a lot of risks and side effects.
I think you're absolutely right, and something that people need to think about when they're looking at all of this. So we're really way over time here. We're already 10:07. So let me just quickly read through some of these comments and see if there are any questions here. Pradnya says hello. Pradnya is tagging a doctor. Pradnya is still tagging doctors. Mark says I live in Durham, where it has a rich research community, and they keep a lot of that close to the vest until they're ready to bring it to serious human testing. And he's talking about that famous research triangle, right, including those cities there. Vandana is quoting you and in great detail. My mom's watching from Kerala. Hi, Amma. I'm going to sit up straight. I'm not going to touch my face. I'm going to take off my shoes, and 1,000 other lessons you taught me, Amma. Thank you.
Namaste.
Could COVID death threat is BS. So this is somebody who is saying, I'm going to take him off the screen, but he's basically saying that the COVID is overblown. What do you say to them?
I wish I could say that it was overblown, but like I've mentioned before, my husband is a hospitalist. He is working on the front lines, and unfortunately, I get a firsthand. He's not allowed to tell me names of patients, but I do get a firsthand. I get firsthand that information from him, and patients are sick with this disease. The ones that get admitted, he's definitely told me that patients get very sick. And second of all, not only old patients, he's also seeing a lot of young and healthy patients. So this is not, and even children, we've heard of children also being impacted by it. So this is not something to take lightly. It's definitely not fake news. COVID-19 is real. I wish it was something we could wake up from, but we just all have to be together and really work on this together. But it's real.
Thank you so much. Mark says the pandemic has seriously disrupted people's sleeping habits, which Kavita also said, and so that's something that we've heard. There's so many comics. So many comments here. Mirza, Pradnya's son, loves Calvin and Hobbes, as do I. Courtney's watching. Hello, all. Sree, she's logging in from Tucson, Arizona, cooking dinner while you're doing this, and I'll be listening between chopping veggies. Thank you. I made a Korean dinner tonight, Korean style meatballs. I had to make the non-veg version for my son and me, and we had to make the vegetarian meatballs, meatless meatballs for my wife and daughter. So it was fun. Our dog didn't get any, but she got her own. By the way, our dog is doing her bit. We live in a tall building in New York, so we try to go out as infrequently as possible. She's been out twice a day instead of 3 to 4 times a day. She's doing her part. Yay, Tara. We're so grateful. Mark says, what other comics are you a fan of?
I don't get much time to enjoy as many comics as I'd like to. I know growing up, I used to read Archie's comics, but my husband is huge into comics. He's obsessed with all the Marvel, DC comics, all that stuff before it got.
Remember the comics in India, the Amar Chitra Katha series, which is AKC, which are those great comic books that.
Yeah, India has great comics.
And by the way, Scroll was founded, and the CEO of the company is the gentleman who took AKC and made it ready for the 21st century, the company. And so that's Samir Patel. They did a great job. And Rick says, so anyway, this is all going on. I just don't have time. There's so many comments. You can see on the right side how many there are. Rakesh Kaul is watching. I think that we know Kanika. We'll have to check with my wife. Is she the one? She's the one who keeps me connected. So now the Indian uncle and auntie network is all connecting, and you can see that. There's a dispute whether there are germs on your face, and that's why you should touch your face. So they're now challenging each other with citations and things like that. And Courtney says medical journalism is so important in this time of COVID to get accurate medical info out there. Absolutely. And Courtney is one of our former guests. One of the things we're most proud of is former guests who still watch as guests, as viewers, right? That's the best endorsement we can get.
So
and Courtney and you, all of these people are wonderful. Kavita says you are the best. I'll presume she's talking about you, Doc. And Tim is watching, staying up late here in the basement in the woods in Pennsylvania. Tim, that's the premise of every horror movie. So be careful out there. Pradnya says she's a longtime medical groupie, tagging all her doctors.
Thank you.
Is she giving out what is HIPAA rules about announcing who your doctors are? Is that okay, even if you don't say what your doctor does, or whether you're a patient? What is the you may not even know this, right? But what is the exact HIPAA rule?
I believe patients can definitely disclose who their doctors are, but I know that as a doctor, I can't disclose necessarily who my patients are unless the patient does, and I'm not allowed to share any kind of medical information about the patient that they wouldn't approve of or they wouldn't agree to. Yeah, and Rose loved you saying I want to be a producer because she's a producer herself, so she likes that a lot. And Jonathan says, alas, I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow morning. How will I manage without my COVID fix? You'll watch as soon as you come home from it. First of all, you'll have a great doctor's visit. And then when you come home, you will listen to privacy and social and COVID, and you will talk about that. Let's see here. Kavita says, thanks, Kanika Monga. One more day with you. This is not enough. Wow. And Mark wants to have you on his show. He had Rosa Clemente on, and then he did a special on Nadine Hack that will air tomorrow. So please connect me. You had promised that we could talk with Nadia Clemente, Rosa Clemente, sorry. Would love to connect with her. Salute to all the frontline warriors. Thank you, Samik. And Hyderabad Fesa 5 says, my father is 70. He has a small transport business. He's been working all his life. It's getting difficult to stop him. How can I help? We're becoming this Indian family question and answer time. Hyderabad 5, this lady and her husband were married in Hyderabad, so now she owes you an answer. She's now from there. So yes, Hyderabad's very close to our hearts now. Neither one of us are from there, but It was a beautiful city, beautiful, just wonderful people, amazing food, and our friends and family that traveled. Actually, we just got married in January, so grateful that this was pre-pandemic and everyone could make it there safely and then travel back. So how to help? That's a difficult question. If you're not able to stop, your dad or your father from leaving the house, what I would try to ensure is that all precautions be taken, such as wearing a mask, that hand hygiene that I keep coming back to, and then not obviously touching your face, especially when you've been outside, and avoiding crowded areas as much as possible. And in regard, I'm not sure if if your father goes and has an office that he works at, I urge him to follow what the governments are saying, the guidelines of staying at home right now. They're enforcing, all of those guidelines, but perhaps if your father was to leave and was in a building doing work despite those guidelines, they might be different depending on the city that you live in, I would urge that all surfaces, especially the ones that we touch often, are not only clean but also disinfected. A lot of us forget to clean and disinfect our phones, doorknobs, light switches, a lot of things that we don't realize we touch so often. So that's a precaution that you guys can definitely take to help.
Got it. Kavita says her kids read Archie comic books. Way to go, making dinner, Sree, she says, Rose says. And Courtney asks for the Korean meatball recipe. So here's the good news. That came from the New York Times print edition, the stay-at-home section. Every Sunday they have an at-home section, and there are 5 recipes for 5 weeknights. And so we use that tonight. And I'll send you that, Courtney. You can take a look.
Do they have the vegetarian option as well included?
No, it's the same ingredients, and then you just mix vegetarian meat. Are you a vegetarian?
So my husband and I on Earth Day this year decided to go vegetarian.
Good for you. That's great. I think it's much easier if both people in the relationship are in the same
so we're still
vegetarian category.
Yeah, I mean, my husband predominantly grew up vegetarian, and I never really ate that much non-veg to begin with, but we both decided to do it together. And that's just a personal choice for the environment.
Big mystery solved. Pradnya doesn't actually have 15-30 doctors. She fundraised for them. They're not actually her doctors. We were just worried how many doctors, and if you go and look at the professions, I'm sure there's some things that would raise eyebrows. And we didn't know that you had all these issues. We're joking and we're laughing because otherwise, Doc, we would be crying with everything that's going on. Sometimes we need to laugh. You agree, right?
Yes, laughing and laughter and stress relief are actually extremely important to fight off stress and strengthen our immune system.
Yeah, so here's something fun that just happened. Kavita watching on Facebook and Tunku watching on LinkedIn. That means they were not connected to each other. They were not seeing each other's comments. But at the exact same moment, 10:14 p.m., they both said they like my shirt. So this is a shout out to the Bombay Shirt Company. I was working with them for 2 years, and of course, I still have all their shirts. And they sponsored my global social media speaking tour. And so we are thrilled that we could work together. And now a reminder, they're giving me a chance to remind everyone that I'm doing a free social media workshop for the entire world. Anybody, anywhere in the world can take this free certification course, Fundamentals of Social Media for Journalists, PR professionals, and everyone. Save your seat, mrac.co/social, mrac.co/social. Let me know if you signed up, mrac.co/social. Free certification course starts in June, but get your seats today. You don't need the stuff.
I signed up.
Oh, you did? Okay, I was just going to say you don't need it.
I
guess we all need the baseline, right? We all need to just freshen up on some things and all of that. And Courtney says, thank you for the cooking New York Times reference. And lots of good comments. All right, we got to let you go. We want to thank you very much, Doc, for your time. You are awesome to be here. We want to tell everybody about our shows. We have 9 a.m. tomorrow. That is 9 a.m. Eastern time on, that's about 11 hours from now on Wednesday. That'll be show number 70. And then in the afternoon, then the next day, we have 2 shows that I'll be doing. One is my Hong Kong University show where we talk about fintech and COVID-19. And then at 11 a.m. Eastern, We're going to go to colleagues of Kanika's in the medical profession. We're going to meet the frontline workers and a nurse over at from Northwell Hospital. She's a frontline nurse saving lives every day, and she's going to talk to us 11 a.m. Eastern. And then on Friday, we're going to do a Work on Something series where we try to up your digital game. And we've done one on Twitter, we've done one on design, and this week we're going to do another one. So it's going to be very exciting. So please join us. Everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. We would love to have you there and to know when things come up. And then the final thing that I'm offering everybody is this WhatsApp code. So what it is you can go in and use your phone and just, you will be able to just hold up your phone. Doc, you can just lean over on the side. You can know the other side. There you go. Oops, where am I? Okay, there we are. So if you just pull out your phone and take a, with your iPhone, you take a picture, or don't take a picture, just hold up your iPhone camera. You will be able to get the get on my alert system, and you'll get an alert every time I'm live. It's a WhatsApp, not a group with racist uncles. This is a WhatsApp alert. All it is a very soft alert when we are live. And please email me. We would love to talk to you all about your questions or comments. We're looking for guests. We're looking for topics. We're looking for sponsors. And we have a great sponsor system. And we would love to have you sponsor part of our show and participate. And with this, we're going to let, is he coming on? Is he going to join us?
I think he'll say hi.
Oh my God, everybody, yay.
You can, you want to come?
Hey, Sree, how are you?
Hello. Hey, very nice to meet you. Do you have a name, sir?
Ritik.
Ritik, Dr. Ritik, how are you? Ritik, very nice to meet you. What's your last name?
Tiwari.
Tiwari, all right. Very nice to meet you. So glad to see you. I want to give everybody a chance to take a screenshot. That we're going to do this because this is a rare, we've seen Dr. Monga on many different opportunities on television and things like that, but not here. So we want to make sure everybody has this. That's Ritik and Kanika, both doctors. We salute both of you. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. Are you okay? I know you're going the extra step of taking off your dirty shoes in the car and then switching to clean shoes coming in. What is it like, if you don't mind, just on the front lines? How do you keep your mental strength up, your mental health strong, Doc?
Yeah, actually, just spending a lot of time with Kanika. I've been trying to get into more meditation on a daily basis too. So just starting my days before my shift, doing like a 20-minute meditation. Just trying to decompress at work too. When things get really busy, sometimes you just need those 10 minutes just to sit down and eat, just not do anything. So
yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
What is the mustard seed community?
Oh, this was a restaurant in El Paso, actually, where Kanika and I met. It was a restaurant. The philosophy was sort of pay what you want, pay what you can. And it was like
what kind of cuisine?
They had everything.
There were volunteers that cooked there daily. And so whenever we'd go eat there, we could decide how much we wanted to pay. But what was important to know is whatever you pay, if another person walks in after you and didn't have anything to pay, they could still eat there because of what we had already paid forward.
Oh, I've not heard of a system like that of any restaurant. Yeah, of course, so, I'm sure they're in trouble like every other restaurant.
Right.
And I know that El Paso is a great food town because of all the great kind of combination of cuisines that have intersected right there, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was a wonderful experience. I'm so glad I got to go and live in El Paso. The people, the patients are grateful. They're loving, and they just, we got to learn Spanish there. We met each other there. So it's.
Wait, you met at the restaurant too? You met at the restaurant?
No. We met in El Paso at medical school. But
I thought I heard him say you met at the restaurant.
No. We used to go there a lot because we love the philosophy of just paying it forward.
Yeah, I've not heard that at all.
Really good there too.
Yeah.
So, and then it was just really nice to, it was a really nice place to go, and we bought a lot of T-shirts from there.
Well, my mom likes my my t-shirt, my shirt. And Courtney says, hey, Sree, if you need a nice jacket, check out, she's recommending Survivalon. Maybe my Uncle Bert could hook you up, okay? And a nurse is making a joke. What do you call an alligator detective? An investigator. I'm not sure what the context, but it is funny. It's like a dad joke. But I will say that we saw on a previous time the doc was with us, someone said rheumatologists are investigators, are detectives of the industries. I don't remember your reaction to that.
That's very much true. There's we get cases all the time that on the wards that we have no idea what's going on. So rheumatology is one of the first people we think of calling. So
yeah.
Actually, I have I have easy access to.
Yeah, easy. I hope you charge him a lot extra for that. And yeah. Courtney says, I like your shirt, Rithik. She wasn't sure of the spelling. It's not a common name, right? You as you know, have you met many Rithiks? But have you met many Rithiks?
No, I'm the only one I've met.
Well, there's an actor, Hrithik Roshan.
Of course, yeah. And there's also the Chronicles of Riddick, so it can be the Chronicles of Riddick.
His screen name was the Chronicles of Riddick.
I feel like if we just stay here, we're going to hear all these secrets. I have another appointment, but we're going to just do this. Restaurants like that, volunteer run, pay what you for. What a great model. Yes. We have pizza in Manhattan, the same theme. Is there a cartoon you couldn't convert your wife to? Mark says. Is there a comic book or cartoon you couldn't convert your wife to? What is something you love that she just wouldn't read if you forced her to read?
I'm trying to go through all the Tintin comics again. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to
read. I love Tintin. Yeah. This is where some French Francophile is going to come in and say you're pronouncing the name wrong.
Probably, I'm sure.
Yeah. I say Tintin. That's how we grew up, and then I love the Asterix and Tintin comics.
Yeah.
Well, we could keep going, but I hope to see you both in New York, and at some point when we can travel. Otherwise, we'll meet in Houston. I'm sure I come out to Houston a couple of times a year. One of the organizations I work with, Pratham, was U.S. enterprise was born in Houston about 20 years ago. So, yes, and Courtney says Tintin is great. There you go.
Yeah, I worked with Pratham a lot when I was in college.
Are you kidding? I didn't know that. So I work with them every day. So we'll talk about that offline. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank the doctor for watching. This is one of the things I do is I reintroduce our guests right before we go off, so that if people want to watch, they know they can rewatch right away. This is not one of those webinars where the guest you have to wait till they send you a card or something or a link. So it's Kanika Monga is the name of our guest. She's our fabulous doctor who is a rheumatologist and a journalist, medical journalist, interested in medical journalism. You can find her at Dr. Kanika Monga. She also has a Contently website that you can check out, contently.com. And thank you so much, Kanika. I'm so grateful to you for your time, your energy. 90 minutes. You should be spending time with your husband before he goes off to the office, and I'm sure he wants to spend time with you as well. So thank you very much. And we'll say goodbye. We get to say goodbye. I'll press the button, but you can sign us off. Go ahead. You can say bye.
Bye.